I have any tips specifically for developmental edits. My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. Developmental edit is the earliest stage of editing, in my opinion. You can go about doing this however you want, but this is usually going to be very early on in the editing process. So you have done like an outline and a draft, and you have like shoveled all of the sand into the sandbox, and now you are trying to make a structure that you can then build the rest of the story on. And so you are going to focus on story structure, character arcs, and also making sure that you know and understand genre and category and the expectations that come along with both. I'm going to start with that one because you are probably thinking like, who doesn't know their genre? Lots of people. Lots of people, when they have a first or even a second draft, do not know what genre they are writing. This happens in a couple of different ways. One, they don't know the market at all, and so they think that they are writing fantasy, but they are actually writing something totally and completely different, or they are writing fantasy from 50 years ago, or they are writing their genre from 50 or even 100 or 200 years ago. So, like, this comes from people just literally not knowing the market. Or it comes from people thinking that they know the market, but not totally identifying the correct tropes and expectations. And so they are actually writing something that is adjacent or that is different. I cannot tell you how many people come to me, think that they are writing epic fantasy, when in reality they are writing something cozy. And they keep shoehorning all of these big fights into it that don't make a lot of sense, but you can tell that their joy comes from writing the cozy stuff. And I'm like, hey, would you consider a genre shift? So sometimes this is inadvertent, and sometimes it is just obliviousness. So I like figure out what your genre is and make sure you are meeting those expectations. Same thing with an age category. If you are unsure what age category you're writing for, so middle grade, young adult, adult, possibly new adult, we will start talking about that as if that maybe is a thing in there. You might be on the wrong side of one of those based on like your story arc and the character that you have written, which then means you might need to adjust some expectations. Not always, but sometimes. Now I'm going to talk about structure and character arcs in tandem with one another. So when I'm doing a developmental edit for somebody, the first thing I do is I pull open a beat sheet and I plug in their word count and their page count and make sure that I know like an inciting incident should be happening by approximately this page. And as I am going through their book, I fill in all of the scenes as they are happening, as they fall now. So even if I'm like, oof, boy, I know for sure that we're going to end up cutting a bunch of these words off the beginning, I just plug it in as it is now so they can see how many scenes have happened before they have gotten to the thing that they intended to be their inciting incident. Oftentimes, when I am doing this for people, I have a sheet that has like some boxes already like pre-filled, and it's not a specific rule of like how many scenes you have to have in a novel, but on these developmental edits I usually end up adding just dozens of scenes. People have too many scenes that are not doing more than one thing at a time. And so there's just like a scene break and scene break and scene break. And we're just breaking scenes constantly because we haven't found the story yet. So I plug in the scenes as they are happening in the way that they have been written. And then after I've read the entire novel and I believe that I have a sense of what this person is trying to do, usually we will have a good conversation before this. Sometimes they send me a thing, they're like, help, I don't know what this is, I don't know what to do with it. But usually we will have said like, okay, I am planning to write an adult romance, but it's got this speculative element to it. And so I know that I'm looking for a romance structure. So I'll say, okay, well, that means that you got to have a grand gesture. You got to have a pretty long denouement after your resolution. The resolution has to be them getting together. They have to break up or look like they're going to break up at some point during the book. Like there are some structural things that we are looking for within that genre. And if the story is not meeting those expectations for structure, I will then duplicate the tab and I will do the spreadsheet again and I will say, okay, this is what I think you should do. This is where I think these scenes should move around. And that is always a suggestion, not a rule. I am not the boss of you. I am not a publishing overlord of any kind that is forcing you to make your story a certain way. But I will just say, I think this is a way that you could maintain most of your story as it is now, that you could maintain the heart of what you are trying to do. We're just going to move some things around in order to make the structure feel more correct and accurate for what the audience is expecting. If the structure is in good shape to begin with, I might be like, okay, well, you got to make a little bit of a cut here or fill this out a little bit more. Like there might be a few little adjustments to make, but overall structure is good. So let's instead focus on character arcs. We want to make sure that your character is at an opposite place from beginning to end. So the hook mirrors the resolution. So this means that your character either got what they wanted and not in the way they expected, or they are in a better place, but it wasn't what they wanted at all. So like the character can be an opposite, like Rose Dawson DeWitt from Titanic starts off as a wealthy socialite who's in a romantic relationship, and at the end of it, she is single and alone and broke and penniless and disconnected from her entire network. She is the opposite of where she was at the beginning. Now she's happy where she was miserable before, but she is in the opposite place of where she started at the beginning of the story. Or you can have Simba from The Lion King, who wanted to be king because he wanted to boss everybody around, and at the end he got to be king, but he learned that he had to be a servant leader of his people. He doesn't get to just boss people around because then everybody dies. And so he got what he wanted. He is a mirror of where he was at the beginning. It just didn't look the way that he expected. And they're going to have at a pinch point that your character should be reactive. They are forced to act. They are pushed out into the world. This is Barbie being told, no, you have to want to know. I'm literally going to force you to take this step that you didn't want to take. Somewhere during the midpoint-ish, they will start to become more proactive and take control of their destiny. And then between the second pinch point and the plot turn, somewhere in there, they will become fully proactive. So they have taken control of their destiny. They are making decisions on purpose, and they are now going into the arena to fight because they want to, not because they are being shoved in. In order to fix your structure or fix your character arcs, you might be deleting scenes, you might be deleting characters, you might be writing new characters in, you might change genre, you might change the age of your protagonist, you might chop entire chunks of the story off from the beginning, you might write in whole new scenes, you might take 4 scenes in a row and blend them into one scene together so that it is a more richly realized and immersive story rather than being 4 little choppy scenes that feel like they don't have anything to do with each other. Developmental edit is usually the one where it looks like it's getting worse before it gets better. The developmental edits is where a lot of people give up. They wrote the story, they were excited about it, now they're like, oh, it wasn't perfect the first time, well, I don't want to do this anymore. This is where a lot of people give up, is during this developmental edit. And they were like, well, I just wanted to like write a story and put it on the internet and make $1 million off of it. And like, girl, me too, absolutely, that's what we wish for you, but that's not going to happen. You're going to have to fix the story.